Everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda Rose, and if you are new to my channel, I am a high school teacher in Brooklyn, New York. I teach social studies, and today I am getting on here to share with you guys a list of new books for me that are all from people of color. I wanted to share this with you all because I have enjoyed every single one of these and I wanted to share them with you. So I have a total of 5. And I will give you like a little summary of each one just so that it can hopefully whet your appetite and you'd want to read them. But I'm obviously not going to give away too much because then like what's the point, right? So first things first, if you haven't already, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel and that you like this video, and let's get into it. 5 new book recommendations from authors who are people of color. So the first book I want to talk about is Driving While Black from Gretchen Soren. I had never heard of this woman before. She's actually based in New York, which is awesome. And last year, a colleague of mine had asked if we just wanted to go to a book reading that was free at the library. And I was like, yeah, of course, why not? And this was the author that we got to hear from. So she has done so much research behind the role of the automobile, and not only research starting like after the Civil War, but she also weaves in a lot of her personal experiences, and I just love this book so much. It is a wealth of information, but it's also a really good read. Again, about the role that the automobile played and how it created a place of safety and security for Black families when they were traveling, but then also the dangers that we now know about when it comes to driving and being stopped by police officers. But ultimately, the automobile provided a place of safety and security for many Black families so that they didn't have to take buses when traveling, or they didn't have to take trains when going to see family members, maybe up north or traveling down south. So I highly recommend this book. It also talks about the role the car played during the civil rights movement and how carpooling was so necessary if people were going to boycott the bus system. So I really like this book. It took me a really long time to read it, but that's because I was underlining like crazy. Like every single page I'm like writing through. I'm not even sure if you could see because it's so bright, but every single page I'm like writing notes. So it did take me a long time to get through this one, but I would highly recommend it if you are a teacher or if you want to just know a little bit more about history and specifically the cool twist on the car itself. So the next book is actually Bro by Greg Francis. Now, Bro is not new to my edition, but I wanted to include it because Greg is a Black author and I absolutely love this book. He is a friend of mine, and when he came out with the book, I read it. I fell in love with it. It's so relatable. But I love this book because it is a fictional book, but Greg does a really great job at weaving in some of his personal life experiences into the book. It talks about him growing up in Brooklyn and experiencing gentrification. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? The influence of cops in the neighborhood, and then also violence. So what a timely book, because this does deal with police brutality and then everything that we're experiencing now. And so I just find it so crazy. I think he wrote this also though along the time when that was the climate and the culture, maybe back in 2016. And so to see these things resurfacing, but it is a great book. It's about him and his brother, his younger brother, and how he's responsible for taking care of his younger brother. But they also talk about girls and relationships. It's just a really good book, and I highly recommend this if you're just looking for something easy to read, or if you want to see if it's good for your classroom. I would definitely encourage you to pick up a copy, read it. You'll be done with it in a really short amount of time, and I highly recommend it. Bro by Greg Francis. So the next book is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, and she is Dominican from New York. I loved this book so much. So I actually saw Megan from Too Cool for Middle School post about her other book, Clap When You Land, and then I just started like asking for recommendations. What's the book that I should read first? And so many people said to read The Poet X, and I have not been disappointed. So this is more of a novel in verse, and I will say at first I was a little skeptical because I'm not a fan of poems. And so I was really scared to read it because I wanted to like it so much, especially because of everything that I was reading about the author, and she just had so many great reviews. She's won so many awards, and so I really, really wanted to like it, and I did. Like, I'm not disappointed at all. Although it is poetry, it's palatable, it's easy to understand, and she's still telling a story. So it's not individual poems, which I'll get to in a second, but she's telling a story, which I guess is exactly why it's a novel in verse. But I would highly recommend. It talks about her growing up in New York and all of the changes that females go through when our bodies are changing, when we're getting older, when we're experiencing certain times of our life once we hit puberty, and getting catcalled, and then trying to like figure out where you stand with boys and just relationships, but then her diving into poetry. There's just so many good things and so relatable. And then of course, because of her culture, she includes a lot of Dominican culture, a lot of religion, which is really embedded in a lot of Hispanic and Latino families. And so I would definitely recommend this book. I liked it so much, and when I posted this on my Instagram, so many people were saying how much they liked it, and so it is definitely a cult favorite from the people who have read books from Elizabeth Acevedo. It seems like most people are saying yes, this is a win, and I also give it my stamp of approval. Not like it needs any more approvals, but I too love this book and would highly recommend it. So the next book that I have here is Counting Descent from Clint Smith, and I would actually, it actually says poems. So yes, although it is a book, it's definitely a collection of poems. And I will say that these poems are complex, they make you think, but it definitely talks about the Black experience. And the reason why I decided to purchase this book is because Clint Smith was doing a webinar, maybe like back in April, maybe, or maybe May. And it was the first time that I had ever heard him speak, and he was also reading from the poems. And I was just really intrigued, again, because I'm not someone who really likes poetry, but what he talks about and what he shares, it's so thought-provoking. Here, Elizabeth Acevedo is actually someone who reviewed it, and I like what she said here. It says, "The invitation is intimate and generous, and also a challenge. Are you up to asking, what is Blackness? What is Black joy? How is Black life loved and lived? To whom do we look for these answers?" So I was so pleasantly surprised by this. Again, they are individual poems, so they're not really telling a fluid story, but again, they're telling an experience. And as I was reading them, some of them just really made me sit back and just like stop in my tracks and want to read it over again and want to read it over again and really try to understand everything that he was saying. I think that this would also be great for high school students if you selected some of the poems. I would highly, highly recommend. But for sure, if you're into poetry, or if you're not and you're just like, I'm not really sure, I would definitely say check this one out, because I was feeling the same way and I was pleasantly surprised. Again, it's not super rhymey. I think that's what I don't like about poems. It's not super rhymey, but it still does a great job at sharing an experience. And the last book I want to talk about is Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. Now, I have this one actually on an audiobook, and I am currently up to chapter 4. So I'm not done with this, but I definitely wanted to mention it to you guys because this is a different type of book. This book is all history and learning about from the very beginning when Africans were brought over to the United States. What was their intent? What was the mindset behind it? How did religious people justify enslaving Africans? And so I wanted to get this out there, even though I'm not done with it, but this book has been circulating all over social media. But I definitely am getting into like the really nitty-gritty of this. There's definitely some chapters or excerpts in here that I can 100% see myself using in the classroom. But I also wanted to throw this book out there as well because of just how rich it is in history and literally starting and taking us from the very beginning all the way through. I think that that is really important for us to know and understand, especially in the current climate of our culture, and for us as teachers when we are going back, whether it be remotely or in the building. There are some things that are going to have to change about our curriculum, and this is a great book to not only use in the classroom, but to also feed yourself with some really great solid information so that you can be much more equipped when you get back into the classroom. So that's pretty much it. Those are my 5 book recommendations from Black and brown authors. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. As always, please make sure that you like and that you subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.